Do you have what I call an action plan? Or in essence, the third concept is, have you developed a a viable strategic action plan for the courageous conversation? This is the third key point. Have you taken the time to methodically develop an action plan on how you plan to engage in this courageous conversation? Man, this is so incredibly important, because what I have learned is we can have random conversations. We can have conversations that are just organic and that happen. That is really, really important, and that does happen. But when I'm getting ready to go talk to someone I know I'm going to disagree with, that I get my mind prepared for, that the reason we're having this courageous conversation, the reason we're setting up this particular environment is because if we didn't set it up like this, and if I didn't deal with myself the right way, there's no way I can engage in this courageous conversation. If I'm in that situation, then what I got to do is I got to develop an action plan. Now you say, Josh, what is an action plan? An action plan is really simple. Number one, what is your goals? What's your goal? What questions need to be asked? Because you want to be strategic with your questions. What are the facts? What do you know? What do you know about the situation? What is your desired outcome? This is important. I'm going to talk about this a little later, but again, the courageous conversation is not about being right. I want to say that again. It's not about being right. It's about learning. It's about understanding, and sometimes even empowering people with information they would not know unless they have the courageous conversation to potentially cause them to change their mindset. Because some people just ain't going to change. It's just what it is. They're going to be who they are. They're going to believe what they believe. But there's some people who are going to change. Number four, what questions do you bring? When do you plan to bring up the questions? What's the timing of the question? Because again, anytime you're in a courageous conversation, you want to make sure you're intentional about it. What responses do you anticipate? What do you anticipate they're going to say? What's going to be their stance? And then, if all else fails, what's your plan B? Anytime you come into a conversation, you want to make sure that you have a plan B. Now, the question becomes, Joshua, why do I want to create this strategic action plan for my courageous conversation? Well, the first reason you want to create it is because, number one, it prepares you for positive results. I'm going to share a quote with you later, but I'm going to say it before I get there. It says, those who plan to fail, fail to plan. I'm going to say it again. Those who plan to fail, fail to plan. If I don't have a plan, there's a good chance I'm going to fail. So when you develop your strategic action plan for the courageous conversation, the likelihood of you actually succeeding is greater because you had the plan. And number two, when you have this plan, it enables you to stay focused and not get distracted. I want to say it real quick. You stay focused and you don't get distracted. I'm sure many of you would agree with me. There's been so many times where you've had conversation with people and you had one intention, and next thing you know, you're talking about something else for another 2 hours. Or maybe there's an issue you want to address, but somehow it gets switched to another issue and you forgot what your intention was. And this happens a lot. A lot of people are not able to solve problems because they get distracted and they lose their focus and they lose their intent. A lot of people get mad and they get hyped and they start saying stuff that ultimately affects the outcome, because if they were action and they were prepared to know, look, if they're going to say this, it's going to really get on my nerves, stay calm. I'm not going to like what's going to happen here. Stay calm. Don't bring it up yet. Wait till the time is right and drop the question. This is a strategic action plan. And this is important because it can affect the outcome of the courageous conversation. I said this to you earlier. Churchill says, "He who fails to plan is planned to fail." If I ain't got a plan, I'm planned to fail. If I'm going into this courageous conversation, I think I'm going to wing it, and I think I'm going to solve the problem. You may get lucky, and you may, but even counselors understand there needs to be some plan, there needs to be some blueprint in order to engage in a quality and a positive and a life-giving conversation. And then I love this. There's a concept that a gentleman came up with. His first name is Glenn. He came up with this concept. It's called courageous conversations around race. And it's a model that he uses because he understood that in order to be effective in his courageous conversations about race, there has to be a viable action plan in place that can be followed or that can be developed in order to effectively have a result. So if I'm going to have a courageous conversation, what's my plan? What's my tool? What's the blueprint that I'm going to lay out for this conversation? Because in order to produce results, I got to have a blueprint. Now, we'll make it real. There's a friend. We're having an issue. What's your action plan in that conversation to produce a positive result? Maybe there's a professor, and the professor gets on your last nerves because maybe they're racist, or maybe they have unconscious bias, and you know that. What's your plan to have a conversation? Maybe it's a roommate, and your roommate has made you feel some type of way. You're with them for the whole year. What's your plan to have the conversation? I know there's some football players on here, and maybe you have some issues amongst your teammates right now. Maybe someone's getting on your last nerves. Maybe you have an issue with your coach. What's your plan to have the courageous conversation, to have the tough conversation that's going to lead to a positive result? And that's just what I'm telling you. And if we're going to see the positive results of courageous conversations, not only amongst racial issues, not only amongst political beliefs, not only amongst various ideologies, not only amongst different ways of doing things, but even in our personal relationships, even in our friendships, even in amongst our teams, or even amongst our colleagues as professionals. What's the action plan that you set for the courageous conversation? Me and my wife have just got on board about 3 months ago to become what we call marriage mentors. Not that we have all the answers, but some people from our local church asked us to be marriage mentors. And in order to be a marriage mentor, your job is to mentor other marriages, but more importantly, to help marriages that are really just in a tough position. They're in a tough time. And we had to go through this training that was literally all day Friday and all day Saturday. And the training was really powerful. But the part of the training that was so impactful for me was the guy that's over this program created this program called a scorecard. It's a scorecard that you use in order to mentor people that are having challenges in their marriage. So in essence, what would happen is they would take this assessment, and this assessment would highlight specific areas that they're going through. And so you would bring up this assessment in a particular conversation. Maybe they're really upset. Maybe they can't have this conversation amongst one another. And so you guide them through this conversation. And as you guide them through this conversation, there was a process that he said that you do. He said the first thing that you do is that you listen. You don't offer no solutions. You just listen. He said the second thing you do is you allow them to figure out how they're going to solve the problem. So before you interject, you let them solve the problem. And the third thing he said, then after that, then you teach and you confront what they did right, what they did wrong. And he said, the reason I want you to do that is because he found in his strategy of having courageous conversations with couples that were married, that sometimes you can't just tell someone what to do. Sometimes there's a methodical plan that you use in order to produce a positive result. And this model, or this viable action plan, and this courageous conversation model that is used to help marriages has saved many marriages. It has changed people's lives. It has made an incredible impact. And although we're dealing with racial relations, although we're dealing with disagreements, although we're dealing with friends and a variety of other things, the same concept is true. If you can create a plan or an action plan that you can implement into your situation for the courageous conversation, I believe, like these individuals have saw as far as marriage mentors, I believe the same will be true in your life as well. So what I want to tell you really quickly is as you continue to engage in these courageous conversations, not only do you want to check yourself, not only do you want to make sure that literally you're setting the right environment, you're setting the right place for a conversation, but the third thing you want to do is you want to have a viable action plan. If you can say out loud with me, someone say viable action plan. One more time, if you can say it out loud with me, someone say viable action plan.